for all the hard work they've done for this event. And this event, I have to say, is one of the highlights of my career since I started the Sherwood Anderson Literary Center back in 1999. So it never ceases to amaze me where someone can go just by reading a book. Speaking of books, I have a copy of Winesburg, Ohio from 1919. This is a first edition. You see it there on the left. I didn't grab that photo off the internet. That's my book. And I'm going to share this with you. I'm going to pass this around now. It's wrapped in red paper, so I know where it is. But anyway, I'm going to pass this around because I want you to be able to say to your friends and neighbors and family tomorrow that you touched and held a first edition of Winesburg, Ohio. This is 100 years old, so treat it like you would your grandmother. And when it comes back over here, I have family over here. You can just leave it with them right over here. All right. Also, I have, in case you want your own copy of Winesburg, Ohio, I have the critical edition back on the back table for $10 or 2 for $20. So see me afterward, or Jean. We'll split whatever we make on that between my organization and Heritage. So we are celebrating Winesburg's centennial, but also Sherwood Anderson's birthday. And so what I'd like for you to do is join me in singing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow, because they wouldn't have sung Happy Birthday back when we in Sherwood's day. I've got a musical track to go with it, but we're going to say, and so say all of us, since they don't, because that's what they say in the track. They're not going to say which nobody can deny. So it's 3 times for He's a Jolly Good Fellow, and so say all of us. So let's see it happening. How do I get that to click? Or do I have to go up here?
You can just do it on your belt.
How do I do it? Is this the click? Yes.
Actually, you want to drag it forward. You want to listen to it back with that yellow one.
Yeah, I just need to click that button.
Oh, click it?
Yeah.
All right, John.
All right, sorry. Technical difficulty. We could sing it again, but we won't. One of the reasons Winesburg, Ohio has staying power is that it's a jolly good story. Wouldn't you say? Give a round of applause if you think Winesburg, Ohio, the writings of Sherwood Anderson are jolly good. Let's hear it. So there you have it. That's the relevance of Winesburg, Ohio in the 21st century. It's a jolly good story, so I'm all done, right? No, I'm not. All right. So, our purpose here tonight is to discover or uncover why we should care about Winesburg, Ohio. In these days of social media and advanced technology and fake news and all of the almost normal 21st century cares of our daily life. So that's our purpose for tonight. I'm a teacher, so I have to outline it this way. Our purpose is why we should care. Our process, I'm going to paint some broad strokes about Winesburg, Ohio, about Sherwood Anderson, about its relevance, and I'm just going to build off of those. I'm not here to, to really delve into the intricacies of the work itself. We're going to paint some broad strokes and just help you to understand why it's still relevant. The payoff to you is that you learn something new about Sherwood Anderson, about Winesburg, Ohio, and you might even sleep well tonight. Not because I'm boring, but because this will help put to rest some of the false conclusions and things that people have drawn about Sherwood Anderson and about Winesburg, Ohio. I love this long title I was given. Why we should or should not care about Winesburg, Ohio. And here it is in the 21st century. It's got the lights beaming up on it. That is the first edition with the dust jacket. You can see my copy doesn't have that. But anyway, some of the theories about why it's no longer relevant. It's outdated in style. It was written 100 years ago. Who cares? Anderson is forgotten. Sherwood, who? I don't know who that is. Other writers are better. Well, none of his books were turned into movies, so he's not that great. He was never on a bubblegum card. His themes don't apply to today. Again, this was written over a century ago. What was important then isn't important now. It's just too weird. I read the introduction, and it was so weird, I just put the book down. These are all things people say about Winesburg, Ohio. And those are the reasons they give for it not being relevant. I don't know when my slide's not showing properly. But anyway, one of the reasons it is relevant is the setting, which is the thing that most people pay attention to in Winesburg, Ohio. With the setting taking place in Clyde, of course, you've all seen the map. The map's in the first edition. It's in most editions of Winesburg, Ohio. And courtesy of Google, you can see how much it matches up. We've got Buckeye Street, Main Street, the railroad tracks, and the whole deal. But anyway, so the setting is Clyde. Obviously, we're all still here. The town's here. It's still called Clyde. It's relevant, okay? You could look at it from that point of view. It's the story of the American small town. Again, you go back a century when people were living in small towns and they were starting to grow, and this sort of captures a snapshot of life back then. And on a bigger scale, it's the story of America. The life in the small towns, a microcosm of America. And even on a broader scale, you can say it's the story of mankind or the story of the world. And I have to say, my work with the Literary Center, I fielded questions from people all over the world who are reading Winesburg, Ohio. So we're talking about people in India, there was somebody in Tehran, Iran, who contacted me, was doing a master's thesis on Winesburg. Anyway, I asked all these people, they asked me their questions, and then I write back and say, well, why are you studying that? Why do you care about Winesburg, Ohio? And they all answer the same way. It never surprises me, they just have different ways of saying it, but they say, because the story of Winesburg, Ohio is where I live. It's describing where I live. So that's why the setting is so important. People are seeing it as a snapshot of where they live and the difficulties and issues that they have to deal with. So it's relevant in all these ways. Okay. So I'm sure there are some of you who haven't read it. And for those of you who have never read Winesburg, Ohio, or maybe you've read it, it was years ago, and you forgot mostly what it's about, or maybe you read it and it didn't make any sense. I'm going to give you a mini summary of its significance and some of its themes and things, but I'm not going to issue any spoilers. There's no spoiler alert. If you haven't read it, it's okay. I'm not going to spoil it for you. All right, so Winesburg has a classic work of literature. In his memoirs that were published, about 20 years after Winesburg, Ohio, and a year after Anderson's death, he wrote this about Winesburg, Ohio, that had become a kind of American classic and has been said by critics to have started a revolution in American short story writing. And so he died knowing it was a classic piece of literature. The thing is, the generation of writers who came after him, the lost generation they're called, mostly the 1920s, Hemingway, Faulkner, Fitzgerald, Steinbeck, of course, everybody's heard of them. So anyway, he knew that what he had accomplished in Winesburg, Ohio was a classic piece of literature, a classic work. Oops. It's supposed to say small town life. At the time it was published in 1919, the American Reading in Public held an idealized concept of small town life. It was sort of, I wouldn't say glamorized, but romanticized. And, you know, it was romanticized for mainly three things. That there were hardworking people who lived there, people with strong Judeo-Christian values, and there was a slower pace and a simpler kind of life. Okay, so that was sort of the romanticized view of life in a small town, and Winesburg, Ohio was seen to have captured that in some respects. Small town life also did not, in the romanticized view, it was free of the drama and the hardships of city living and farm life. On the other hand, Anderson's Winesburg was filled with people that he called grotesques. Okay, you see them, some of them pictured here in the paintings here in frames. They were lonely, they were separated, they were lacking in love, and they were trapped in their small town by their desires, beliefs, and their values, and they were unable to distinguish between their reality and what was going on in their minds. So that's why they struggled. So again, these were Anderson's grotesques. Let's see what's happening. So basically, the grotesques were people who hold on to a truth, a personal truth, and then they turn that truth into a lie by trying to live by it. Okay? It's a little confusing, but you see that this person here is grabbing their head because it's so frustrating to try to understand it. It would be like you think you figured out something about life, and now that's your way of living, and all it does is get you in trouble. Okay? So you think you've got life figured out, and it's all wrong. Well, that's what's happening to these people in Winesburg, Ohio. They're trying to live by something they believe in, and it turns out to be a lie. It doesn't work for them. And we can help to help you understand what it means to be a grotesque. If you look in the thesaurus, any thesaurus, you'll find these words that mean the same as grotesque. You know, ridiculous, laughable, outrageous, monstrous, misshapen, distorted, weird. Okay? These are things that these characters portray in some respect. Okay? That's only half the story. But what we're going to look at is what is the outcome of living this kind of life. Okay? It's captured in the introduction to Winesburg, Ohio, called the Book of the Grotesque. And Sherwood Anderson says in the chapter called Hands, which is the first chapter after the introduction, he says it would take a poet to tell the story of these people. Okay? So I took that challenge personally. I said, okay, I'm a writer. I'm going to take this personally. I'm going to turn that introduction about the story of the Book of the Grotesque into a poem. I'm going to share this with you. I wrote this in 2004, and it captures the essence of what Anderson was trying to describe about the people who are the grotesques. I can't promise you'll see all the words, but this is your poetry slam for tonight. So, friend carpenter, help me raise my bed. I want to see out the window without lifting my head. I just can't sleep nights. Something's not right. In fact, here's what's happening to me every night. I lie in a trance, afraid I will die. My heart is failing. I can't open my eyes. A woman controls me. Inside me she stays over and over. Here's what she says. It's strange and grotesque, this passing with death. But you are my friend and you'll understand. It's strange and grotesque, this passing with death. On these nights when I'm afraid I will die, a woman parades folks all through my mind. Each person embraces a truth he only knows, and with it he wrestles and eventually grows. But it's strange and grotesque, this passing with death. But you are my friend and you'll understand. It's strange and grotesque, this passing with death. These people haunt me, so about them I write. They stay with me always until morning light. I reach for my pen and I open my pad. Some of their stories are happy and others are sad. Friend, please don't cry. Let's have a cigar. Let's talk about old times, including the war. Your mustache has yellowed and also has mine. Though we'll both die, right now we have time. It's strange and grotesque, this passing with death. But you're my friend and you'll understand. It's strange and grotesque, this passing with death. So that's my summary of the Book of the Grotesque as a poem. Did I meet the challenge? All right. So now we're going to get back to Winesburg, Ohio in general. The reason there's a big red X on there is that everything your literature teacher taught you about plot development does not apply to Winesburg, Ohio. And that's the 1968 edition that hooked me on the book. So there's not exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement as they have their conclusion. The stories in Winesburg, Ohio are held together by three common elements. So essentially, the town of Winesburg, everything happens in and around Winesburg. The network of relationships between people. George Willard is seen to be the main character. He appears in most of the stories, and people either know him or know of him. But anyway, there's a connection between the people, even if they don't have a direct impact on each other's lives. There's also the cover of darkness in most of the stories. Whenever there's a turning point or something dramatic happens, there's cover of darkness usually around that action. And finally, the use of hands, which I don't have use of. The use of hands in most of the stories. The chapter called Hands about Wayne Biddlebaum, who's the teacher. He pats his students on the head to inspire them. And it's throughout the book. If you pay close attention, you'll see many references to hands. All right. So, one thing I'd like to point out here that may surprise you is that Winesburg, Ohio is not relevant because Sherwood Anderson was a great writer. He wasn't really a great writer in the sense of, being a writer's writer. Some people say that Dr. Reefy in the chapter called Paper Pills symbolized Anderson. He was writing down things that he wanted to remember, and then he'd wad them up and throw them away, or stick them in his pocket and forget about them. And that was Anderson. He rewrote and rewrote his stories. He had a hard time stopping his revisions. And that's why he needed an editor to stop him from rewriting, especially the endings. But the one thing that he was great at being is a storyteller. Okay? And being a storyteller is different than being a writer. Okay? You can tell a great story and not be able to write it well. So, Winesburg, Ohio is seen to be what they call a cubist novel because it's in the storyteller's style. Okay, it's told as somebody remembers the details of something. If you were to talk to your spouse or a family member about your day at work, you know, you're not going to say, now wait a minute, who were the characters and what was the setting and what was the rising action? You're just going to recall the facts as you remember them. And a lot of times you'll interrupt yourself and say, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to mention that so-and-so was there too. Well, that's kind of how the tales of Winesburg, Ohio are put together. It's sort of a patchwork style or a cubist style. That's the way your mind really works. Okay, so storytelling, is it relevant in today's world? If you want a job in marketing or public relations, communications, or anything like that, social media, guess what? Here, this is just a quick search on LinkedIn, and you can't see it all because part of it's cut off. But job postings for people to be communications manager, whatever, marketing director. Look, storytelling. There are 3 articles on how to use storytelling to talk about your data, your company's data. So, you know, this is University of Arizona. They want a communications manager with storytelling skills. So, it's still a skill today that's very important. And it's found a home in the world of marketing and public relations. Now, Sherwood Anderson, some people have said, well, he wrote Winesburg, Ohio, and his writing was weird because he was mentally ill. He had amnesia, he left his job in the area. He suffered from fugue states. There was something mentally not right with him, and that's what he's writing about, and so I don't want to read that stuff. Or, you know, he acted out his stories. He would see or encounter some sort of problem and then try to act it out and see if it made a plausible story before writing it. Well, people thought that was weird, and then some said, well, no, he called it Winesburg, Ohio because he's going to Winesburg, you know, drinking his wine and getting drunk to write. And none of that matters. You know, whether it's true or not true, none of that matters. What matters is that he cared enough to hold those stories, the stories of those people that he encountered in his heart. He held those stories sympathetically and he retold them. And this is how he puts it in Paper Pills in Winesburg, Ohio. On the trees are only a few gnarled apples that the pickers have rejected. They look like the knuckles of Dr. Reefy's hands. There's a reference to hands. One nibbles at them, and they are delicious. Into a little round place at the side of the apple has gathered all its sweetness. One runs from tree to tree over the frosted ground, picking the gnarled, twisted apples and filling his pockets with them. Only few know the sweetness of the twisted apples. So these people who are grotesques, and they're ugly, and they're weird, and they're this and that and the other thing, just like these apples. But what does he say? There's something sweet about them. There's something useful about them. There's something good about them, even though they're gnarled and twisted like those apples. And that picture of apples I found online on a blog. Somebody posted it and said, "Are these safe to eat?" And I laughed and I said to myself, of course they are. Only the few know the sweetness of twisted apples.
Bill,
Yes,
would you like me to try to change the resolutions or bring it all
I'm sorry.
in? Would you like me to try to change the resolutions or bring it all in?
You're welcome to.
Okay.
So collecting and telling the stories of the twisted apples, that is what, that is how Anderson built his legacy. And that's the legacy of Winesburg, Ohio, is that he was telling the stories of these people who were the twisted apples. Okay? And his purpose in doing that was to help them, okay? To bring those issues out into the public. That's better.
Okay, wait a minute. We're gonna do this.
So he brought those issues out before the public in order to help them, to help people who are suffering from those issues and those problems, their desires, their whatever they were experiencing that was keeping them back in life. He shared those stories in order to help them so they could be better, you know, than they were, and he could be better for helping them.
I can't do it.
That's all right. So relevance to today. Anderson has been deemed the 20th century's first psychological writer, where we can peer into the thoughts and motives of the characters through the narrative. However, guess who's peering into our collective psyche nowadays? Everybody you see here. Microsoft, Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon. What are they doing? They're collecting information on us, on what we read, what we watch, what we buy, where we go, who we talk to, what we do, and the big question, why we do what we do. Okay, they're gathering all that information. They now have the perspective of us that Anderson was taking with the characters in Winesburg, Ohio. So this is of significant relevance today. Also, relevance today. The Road to Winesburg, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this book. It was written by Bill Sutton, who was a retired professor of literature at Ball State. He interviewed primary sources in the 1940s, people who knew Sherwood Anderson and knew other people who were connected to him. And he basically wrote this to put together what he called a mosaic of Sherwood Anderson's life. You know, how did he get to writing to Winesburg through his personal experience and his personal life? And that's what this book was about. I have a short video I'm going to show you. I produced an interview with Bill Sutton back about 15 years ago. He's since passed away. He died about 3 years ago at age 99. Okay. So in this video, he's age 90. And when you see it, you're going to say what I said. I hope I look and sound that good when I'm 90. But he's going to talk about Winesburg, Ohio as a landmark book. He's going to talk about it in light of Freud and mental health. And he's going to talk about it in light of the problems of today. So with that, let's see if this, if I can get this to play. Oops. Oh, what happened? No, that's not what I wanted. Gene?
I'm sorry about that. It's only good when it works. I don't know I don't know why it jumped to this view.
Something funny.
All right, the next slide, it's got a link on it to the video. Right there, it's in the corner.
I don't know if it's actually because it's trying to interact with the cloud or what.
Oh, yeah, there, right there. Well, we had an entertaining and inspiring video here. Yeah, it should be that one right there.
I don't know why it's not cooperating.
Well, if we can't get it to go,
Okay.
I'm sorry you can't see it.
I apologize. I don't know why it's doing it.
Spent a lot of time editing the video and getting it just to the point where he's delivering all the points that you need to hear. No. Well, it is, but not the edited version. So anyway, essentially what he says, like, you know, the kicker at the end of this video is he said, I would say that anybody who lives who works in the mental health field has got to read Winesburg, Ohio, because he said he did such a great job of depicting the people and the problems and the mental state of these people that anybody who works in that field of work has got to read the book. And he goes on to say that, you know, there were people with problems 100 years ago and terrible things were happening. He said, but, you know, look at our world today. Do they still happen? Yes, they do. Okay? That makes the book relevant to today. People are still dealing with the same problems. And the other things he said, well, back then you may or may not have gone to a mental health professional if you had issues. Today, we have psychologists, we have psychiatrists, we have counselors, we have people who can help you